Fantastic. Excellent. Welcome, everybody, to our LinkedIn Live. Or for those of you that are watching on YouTube, we're going to be talking about the APM PMQ, a year in review of the new PMQ. My name's Ruth Phillips. I'm Parallel's Head of Training Delivery, and I'm joined by APM's Emily Long, who I'll ask to introduce herself in just a moment. Just want to say welcome to everybody that is watching live. If you are watching live and you've got any questions at all as we go through the webinar, then please do pop them into the comments section, and we'll be able to see those and answer them. If you are watching the recording of this and you've got any questions, then I'll share contact details with you at the end of the session. So let me introduce you to my co-host today. So Emily, welcome.
Hi, thanks, and thank you, Ruth, for having me. I can't quite believe that we're a year in to the new PMQ. It seems to have gone by so quickly. So as Ruth said, I am Emily Long. I'm Head of Professional Standards at the Association for Project Management, which basically means that my team are responsible for the content of the standards and the qualifications that we deliver, so the chartered standard right the way through to PFQ and PMQ. So our kind of core focus is ensuring, one, that the content is fit for purpose and relevant for those future project professionals, but also the assessment is rigorous and reliable.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Emily. And I think, you saying that it's, you can't believe it's been a year since the qualification launched. It must probably be quite nice now to sit back and do a little bit of a review, because I could imagine that the project to launch the PMQ September last year was probably quite long, and you were probably quite glad when that actually came to an end. So it's quite nice now to have a look at some of the good news and review how we're doing with this as a new or an updated qualification. Absolutely. So let me run through the agenda for today's session. So we're going to do a little bit of a look back, take ourselves back to September 2024, the launch of the new PMQ, and Emily's going to talk us through a little bit about some of the reasons for making changes to what is such a flagship and recognised qualification. Understanding, what the improvements that we were looking to see with that. For those of you that may not be quite as familiar as Emily and I am with the PMQ, I'm just going to run you through then kind of what were the key changes, talk to you a little bit about what the current syllabus is, the exam format, and also very importantly the route from PMQ to gaining chartered project professional status. I'm then going to hand over to Emily, and she's got some fantastic information, sort of insights from the first year. When we were putting together this presentation, a lot of the information that Emily shared with me there, I found really interesting as well, as somebody that is regularly delivering the PMQ as a qualification course to our delegates. So she'll share with you some really good insights and also some tips for candidates as well. And then we'll wrap up with a little bit of a look ahead of kind of what might be coming next, and also have the opportunity for people to ask questions. Okay, right. So September 2024, then D-Day, the PMQ is launched. So let's maybe first of all, Emily, put the qualification in context. What is it? Who's it for? Who's it aimed at?
Absolutely. And I think, funny enough, this is one of the first questions we asked when we began looking at delivering this new qualification. We were like, well, actually, who is our target audience? Because I think the project profession, just in a more general terms, is so diverse. So actually narrowing it down about who's our target audience was a really interesting process that we went through. What we landed on was that the PMQ is very much for those with, and we say this very roughly, 2 to 3 years experience delivering projects. Perhaps you've just completed your apprenticeship in project management or finished a degree in project management as well. And the reason we aim it at that is because it is a very generalistic qualification. It covers all areas of project management. It isn't methodology specific. So it's very much about learning all the different great ways to deliver projects and the great structures that should be incorporated, but giving you the knowledge and understanding to be able to pick the ones that are relevant to the project that you're actually delivering, and having that kind of knowledge and understanding from that perspective. So for me, we have a project fundamentals qualification, which is very more kind of base level for people that are perhaps more working on coordinating projects or just on the kind of outskirts of projects and being brought into them. But this is very much about, if you want to deliver a project, if you want to affect that change, here's all the great stuff that you need to know about to make sure that that's successful.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, you know, the PMQ has always been, you know, such a recognised qualification. You know, if you look at jobs for project managers, etc., it is one of the qualifications that is always asked for, very, very respected. So what needed to change? What drove the change, quite significant change that we saw in September last year?
Well, so whilst we only launched in September last year, it was the accumulation of about a 2-year project, which all derived from, I guess, probably the triggering point for us was back in 2020 when, you know, the world locked down and we started delivering exams online. Now, we were in a really fortunate position that we already had an online exam provider. So we took that PMQ and we popped it onto an online platform, and that allowed us to continue that education piece of people through that period of time. However, what it didn't do was take advantage of that technology. It was still very much a traditional written exam, just typing instead of using your hand. It was a 3-hour exam and each question was worth 50 marks. So it was quite essay based. So it was quite rigorous from that perspective. It was quite a daunting prospect for a lot of people. The feedback we were getting, and I think this is before we even went online as well, was that it felt very much like a memory test. Like you had to get in there and write huge amounts of information on a particular topic to be able to get those kind of higher marks. And people found the exam challenging. People didn't say they didn't like the content. They found the actual assessment method was really challenging. We do know over, I think especially the last 10 years, academic practices have evolved and changed. We've learned more about how people effectively assimilate information. And we wanted our assessment to reflect that. We wanted to have an assessment that was truly accessible, could be delivered globally, and was actually a test of people's knowledge and understanding as opposed to their exam technique. So in our mind, everything needed to change. We were also really keen to take a look at the content of the qualification and align it to our competence framework. So one of our big drivers is creating a pathway for people's careers. So really kind of thinking about strategizing your career path. And so by taking the qualification content and actually aligning it to the competence framework, it allows people to go back to that reference all the way out throughout their career, all the way up to chartership. So actually aligning it to that and still having the body of knowledge as a great reference material, you know, that's still absolutely there. But actually, when you're looking at your development, your personal development, when you're having those conversations with your line manager, you can look at the competence framework, you can see how it maps to PMQ and our other products as well. And so it just gives that kind of great basis for that syllabus development.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's really important. And it's something that as a training provider, we see and we fully support as well, that we want to help people to be with them all the way throughout their careers, and for them to be able to see that and I think, as you said, sort of almost integrate the qualifications with those development discussions that they're having with their manager. I think that's really beneficial as well. So apart from that sort of aspect of the career development, the career path, what other kind of guiding principles were there for the updated qualification?
I think for me, the big one that I will always come back to was designing a qualification that placed accessibility at the very heart of it. So we knew that the traditional 3-hour exam, we're seeing it in schools now, it doesn't work for everybody. We know that we have such a diverse range of people that are sitting this qualification, that are going through education, and they need a lot of adjustments to be able to make it an equal playing field in terms of how they're assessed. So what we wanted to do from the outset was say, yes, we can make reasonable adjustments based on people's individual needs if required. But how about we actually look at it from the other end? How about whilst we're designing this qualification, we look at how to most effectively create something that works for the majority of people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, certainly, you know, that accessibility angle, we'll talk about that in just a moment when I talk about the examination. I think that's been really important and really beneficial to people. Okay, so let's have a look then at what has actually changed. Maybe people have been a little bit more familiar with the previous type of PMQ. Maybe colleagues of yourself have said, "Oh my goodness, yes, I remember sitting there for 3 hours," or etc. So, what has actually changed? So, Emily, you talked to us about. I think the target audience hadn't necessarily changed, but certainly the guidance around that had been firmed up and directed around the qualification. So, really, then there was sort of three key things that changed around September last year. So first of all, I'll tell you a little bit about the syllabus content and the alignment with the competence framework, the exam format to make it really accessible, as Emily said, and also the addition of an additional route or pathway to chartered project professional as well. So let's have a look first of all at the new or the current PMQ syllabus. So absolutely, it was aligned to the APM's competence framework. So you can see those 4 areas of competency, and then the syllabus topics falling below each of those. And I always say to my delegates that they are not only understanding now and gaining much deeper knowledge of project management, but actually the breadth of their project management knowledge is going to be significant after sitting the PMQ as well. And I think for me, you know, I talk to them, I say there are 29 competencies in the whole of the APM competence framework, and we are going to be looking at 24 of them, and 24 of those in quite a bit of detail as well. So we are really getting a good spread now of education, of learning, of knowledge about all things project management. So there were some adjustments to other topics in there, but there were 4 new topics as well. The sustainability, focusing specifically then on transition management, integrating outputs into business as usual, diversity, inclusion, and ethics, compliance, and professionalism in there. So how important were including those new topics in the syllabus, Emily?
Absolutely crucial. I think one of the things that we did during the project that I particularly enjoyed was we consulted with the profession. So when you see these topics here, these are what people who are employing that kind of target audience, this is what they want you to have. So we spoke to our corporate partners, we spoke to people that are hiring PMQ level candidates and said, okay, here's the competence framework. Let's talk about what you want from an ideal candidate. And this is what the list that they came up with. It's great now that we have diversity and inclusion, ethics, compliance, and professionalism included. Sustainability was an obvious one that we wanted to update with, and just so crucial in today's world. But yeah, ultimately, this is what organizations are telling us they want from a candidate of a PMQ level. So having that kind of evidence-based has really gave us confidence that we were on the right track in terms of the content. It's also one of the things, whilst there is those 4 new subjects, a lot of the content is also still quite stable, because that is one of the things people said they really liked about the previous qualification was the content. We got a lot of don't touch that content, maybe just the assessment. So we have kept it as stable as possible, but obviously just taken into account the kind of the refresh and where we need to focus on as well for those future project professionals.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, certainly from my perspective, I always think that the PMQ gives you a really holistic view of project management. It's not methodology specific, so it's very, very transferable. And I really just look at the number of topics there are in the people and behaviours column there, which is so important. And many other project management qualifications just simply miss those out and don't include those. So I think that's super important as well. Okay, the exam, the new format exam. So a lot more accessible, 2.5 hours now, which is sort of broken up into 2 parts, an hour and 15 minutes of each, with a break of up to 30 minutes in between. And I think that that's so important. You know, an hour and 15 minutes is a lot more manageable for people to focus on, to be able to bring their best to, knowing then that they can have a bit of a break, they can have a little bit of a, take a deep breath, have a cup of tea, and then start again for another hour and 15 minutes. So I think that format has been really positive and works really well. It's still a really rigorous exam. And I can say this because the Parallel volunteered me to take the new style PMQ. So, no pressure there then. But it's still very, very rigorous. I think possibly more rigorous because there will be questions on everything. There's no selection of which questions you want to answer. You've got to answer everything that is presented to you. They're in different styles, which again, I think mixes things up, gets you to think about different things in different ways, present different challenges to you. There are 20 multiple response, so kind of your traditional multiple choice questions, some select from list questions, so you get a drop down to put a word or phrase into a section of text. Some short response questions. So these are where you need to generate the answer to the question yourself, but they're quite short, a few words, a short sentence, etc. And then the long response questions, which might get a bit of a few candidates going out in a cold sweat thinking about the previous type of essay style answers. But just to reassure you, these are long response, 5 marks each, but they're not really essay answers. You need to just give sort of 5 well-explained, evidence robust statements for each of those answers. Now, probably one of the areas that I always get quizzical looks when I say this, when I'm talking to delegates about this, is that there is no set pass mark across the PMQ. The pass mark is variable. It's set by the modified Angoff method. And Emily, perhaps I'll hand that back to you to explain what that means.
Of course. So one of the things funny enough, when we went into the project and someone said to me, what's going to be the pass mark? And the previous pass mark was 55. And it was just a flat pass mark. And we worked a lot with Cambridge Assessment during the pilot, just to kind of validate our thinking and to really kind of ensure that what we were doing was evidence-based. And our contact there looked at me quite quizzically, and he said, how did you come up with that? And luckily, I said, I have no idea, because I hadn't joined APM at that point. So we had a really great discussion about what the best way to set a pass mark is. Now, what we do is we have a panel of project professionals, and they are going through each and every single item, and they're saying whether a minimally competent candidate would be able to get that question right, or if it's got more than 1 mark, what mark would that minimally competent candidate get? So the person that should just scrape a pass. And those scores are all added together, and it's all weighted through the panel, and that's what creates the pass mark. So each of the papers that are in the system might have a slightly varied pass mark. I mean, they are all very similar, but they might have a varied pass mark. And that's basically offering a fairer way of assessing who that minimally, it's a horrible phrase, isn't it? Minimally competent candidate is, because what it's actually acknowledging is the fact that as much as our item writers will try and make each question of a certain difficulty, the fact is some questions can be interpreted differently. So it allows for that human difference. It also allows for, we don't want an exam paper that is full of, really hard questions. But if there is quite a lot of hard questions in that paper, we can just reduce that pass mark accordingly, so candidates still have the most fairest opportunity to sit. And the idea behind it is whatever exam paper you sit, the minimally competent candidate should be able to pass all 3 of them, because the pass mark has that slight variation to be able to accommodate those different difficulties.
Yeah.
So it's actually very similar to the way they do GCSEs and grade boundaries. It's just that unfortunately we offer 24-hour exams, so it's in a live environment. But if you think about GCSEs and grade boundaries, very similar.
Yes, yeah, and when I think when I'd gone to a webinar from APM about the refreshed exam, and when somebody mentioned that, I thought, oh well, of course, yeah, we don't question it with GCSEs. You don't say, oh, I've got to get 56% in order to get a 6 or whatever it may be. We accept that, but it's maybe a little bit unusual maybe for other qualifications, but completely logical why that method is being used. And then the other new item was, it was announced shortly after the launch of the refreshed PMQ, was that there would be a new pathway to gain your or to take you through to chartered project professional status. So the previous 3 routes have been changed into 4 pathways now, with the addition of pathway 3, which is for those people who meet the eligibility criteria in terms of experience and project experience, and have a recognised assessment for professional practice, for example, the PMQ exam. So, Emily, how important was that new pathway with the refreshed PMQ as well?
Yeah, I think this goes back to that point we were making about accessibility, and that being at the heart of the design of the assessment. We're kind of applying that to everything we do. So we wanted to make chartered as accessible as possible. We knew that PMQ, being the flagship qualification, had enormous people that have gone through it, but we'd never recognised it on that pathway, which seemed a bit of a shame. So what we wanted to do, especially with the launch of the new version, is just have a look at how we can actually achieve that. We also partnered with PMI to offer the PMP on the same pathway. Yeah. And I think that kind of demonstrates, I know it's one of Adam's, our CEO's kind of keen messages to get out there, is that we're talking about one profession. So yeah, there's different organizations, but ultimately we all just want projects to succeed. So pathway 3 is very much about that accessibility piece for us. And PMQ seemed like an obvious one that should be on there. So yeah, it's there, and like you're quite right. It launched quite timely, about 2 weeks after the new PMQ, which is a lovely good news story.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know certainly with some of the delegates that we had on those very early courses, when we told them about this, many of them were really genuinely excited about that they had now a sort of a route that they could use the qualification that they were gaining to achieve that chartered status, which I think is really good news for them. Okay, fantastic. So that's a little bit of context setting, kind of what the drivers for change were, what actually did change. But Emily, I'm going to hand over to you now and let you talk to us about what your insights from APM's perspective you've got from the first year of running the refreshed qualification. So let me move that on to the first slide for you.
Lovely. Thanks, Ruth. So I think that the big headline for us, the one that catches everyone's attention, is our pass rates. So the previous version of the qualification had quite a low pass rate, especially in academic terms. And it was anywhere between 35 and 40%. So that average there. This is a kind of a benchmark point that I've taken just so you can see like the complete benchmark. And it shows about 39%. What we're seeing for the exact same time period, because we do get changes every month depending on which applicants are coming through and things like that, is that we're sitting at about an average of 62 to 63%. So a significant improvement, and it feels a lot more comfortable from that perspective. We are keen to demonstrate that this qualification, and I think you mentioned it earlier, Ruth, is not because it's easier. That's certainly not the case. It is still externally credit leveled. So we use SCQF credit ratings to ensure it still has that same level of rigor and robustness. It's just that the exam now, I think, is more accessible. It offers better equity to our candidates. So that's the kind of the top level good news story that we have to share with you.
Yeah, fantastic. Right. So let's have a look at some of the learning outcomes then.
So Ruth, when she contacted me about doing this session, I immediately went into the data. I love looking at all the data. And this here is a graph which basically shows our stronger learning learning objectives, sorry. So, and when we say stronger, it means either people are scoring full marks on the multiple response, so 1 out of 1 or 2 out of 2 on the multiple select from lists, or 3 or above for those long response questions. And I think, interestingly, well, maybe not so interestingly, life cycles came on top. I think a lot of people, they know life cycles backwards, which is great to see. We also had resource management and schedule management come out as those top performing learning objectives. So yeah, that was really an interesting perspective for us to look at. Unfortunately, from a professional standards point of view, and I'm not sure, Ruth, whether this reflects in your organization as well, we very rarely look at the good and we'll go straight into the bad. So I also have a graph, which is the
Let's have a look at those then. Here we go. So these are the weaker ones now, aren't they?
This is the weaker ones. So this includes, and I should know, the syllabus is all numbered. So that's where those numbers are, those learning objectives that you can see at the bottom. Unfortunately, some of them are quite long, so I couldn't put them all there. It would have looked incredibly messy graph. But the weaker learning objectives is requirements management, risk and issue management, and procurement. So when we pull data like that, our first question is, well, why is that? Is it the questions? So we always go and have a look at what questions are being asked to see if there's ones of particular difficulty. Is there any kind of problems with the performance of those questions? But what we've kind of come to with this particular learning analysis is these 3 areas are areas which you have to just know, especially requirements management. It is one of those that if you know it, you'll be absolutely fine. But if you don't, you're going to be unlikely to be able to get even, a 1 or a 2 marks for a long response question. The questions are very specific about that topic area. I'm going to come on to risk and issue management and procurement shortly when we talk about kind of top tips, because I think these 2 very strongly demonstrate some exam technique that I'd like to share with you from that perspective, because with those 2, especially risk and issue management, I don't think it is the knowledge and the understanding of risk and issue management. I think it's how the exam is being approached in more general terms.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, right. So here we go. So this is now looking at the different types of questions that we've got on that paper.
Yes, absolutely. So I was actually quite surprised with this. I wasn't expecting the multiple response and the select from list to do as strongly as they have. But yeah, they are showing the strongest performance from a candidate's perspective. Short responses coming in at about that 65% in terms of performance, and then long responses at 60. So in terms of performance, they're all 60 or above, which is fantastic. I think the graph makes it look a bit more variable than it is. But again, I'm going to come on to the long response when we talk about the exam techniques and topics, because there is definitely some things that we can approach from that. And the short response is definitely something that is improving. We have definitely seen a learning curve of people approaching the short response when we first launched the qualification to how they're approaching it now. So we would often see quite substantial paragraphs with those short responses. And now people have cottoned on to the fact that actually we just need a sentence for 1 mark. So the maximum you're talking is 2 sentences when approaching those types of questions.
Yeah. Okay, right. So
pitfalls. One of the things I spend a lot of time doing is looking at candidates' actual scripts. So when I get graphs like that we've just seen, I'll then go into the system and I'll start looking at responses to see if I can see where that gauge is coming from. And these are the 3 top pitfalls that we get. So one is not answering the question that's been posed. And this is where I think the risk and issue lower performance is really indicative, because there's one particular question that I'm thinking of that I obviously can't share on a LinkedIn live session. But what I see candidates responding to is they will give every step of a risk process. So they will list everything they need to do. And it's great. It's great that people know that. There is nowhere in the question that asks that. So all that time writing that response, none of it is creditworthy because it's not actually answered the question that's posed. And then writing too much. I know that we're a year in, but I'm not sure we've shaken off the hackles of the box 7 qualification and the amount that people had to write, and in quite a prescribed manner. I think there was for the old qualification, we were very prescriptive about, if we've used this word, this is what we expect. That's not the case for this qualification. So if anything, I would really urge people to curate what they're writing. You don't need to write a lot of information to be able to score high marks. Specifically, if you don't answer the question posed, so if you're not reading that question and you think you know what it's asking, but you haven't actually answered it, you're not going to get any credit for that response. So I know this sounds so basic, and I can go back into my school days and I hear my teacher saying, just answer the question. And I used to roll my eyes, but it's so true. If only I knew then. So very much reading the question. Don't answer what you wish that question said. Answer what the question is asking. And don't write. So the boxes are actually quite indicative of like maximum that you should write. So they will scroll down, especially on the long response, but really think about what you're writing and whether that is what the question is asking. There is a great highlighting tool on the system where you can highlight the actual question, like key points. I would strongly recommend using that if you want somebody that is prone to kind of going off on a tangent. Just highlight the key points and then kind of go into the question and be like, have I answered what that key point was?
That's a fantastic tip. That really is, and again, I echo this when I see our candidates who are doing the sample questions. Very little of the answer I can say that's incorrect, it's inaccurate, it's wrong information. They know their stuff, but if they've not positioned it to answer the question, again, if they're waffling and not kind of getting to the point of that, you can see the marks that they're trying to gain are slipping away in that way. So I think that's really, really good advice. And also about the highlighting tool, because I think sometimes you're in exam conditions, aren't you? There's obviously going to be a little bit extra pressure and that, and just having something that you can just focus on to really keep yourself, on the straight and narrow of making sure you are answering the question that's being asked. I think that's really good. So let's have a look at your other top tips, how to set up for success.
Absolutely. So not preparing is preparing to fail. I feel like I cannot express this enough. I think we are almost victims of better technology. We can sit and do an exam in our home. We can sit and do our exam remotely. We don't need to show up to an exam centre and have our clear pencil cases and be all prepared from that perspective. And in a way, it makes it so it is meant to be easier to show up for your exam. You don't have to prepare your route. You don't have to think about your travel time and what if the train's cancelled or something like that. But equally, it can lead to a bit of apathy when it comes to setting up for the exam. Now, especially if you're doing it, there is different ways to do the exam in terms of different invigilation options. But if you are doing it through our remote invigilation option, there is, and if you're doing it even through some of the other online options, you do need to do your system testing. Trust me when I tell you, it will take away the pressure of the day if you just get that done a week before the exam. So get it all prepped, get it all sorted from that perspective. Read through the guidance. There's some really great information there. That guidance has been created by some of my colleagues in my team who get a lot of questions from people, but also our service innovation colleagues who are on the phones day in, day out. So they utilize that knowledge and put it into that guidance. So do please read it through, because I'm sure you'll find a lot of top tips there in terms of having your setup properly set up for yourself. We have an online mock exam paper, and I think this is such an underutilized resource, because this shows you how the questions are presented, and it gives you a real feel for the system. So as much as you can to try and take away any of that anxiety by knowing the system that you're working on, by knowing that your computer works, that knowing that you've read the guidance, all those things really helps you to just then focus on the topic, because that's all we want you to do. We want you to focus on passing that exam. So if you can take the noise away by doing those kind of preparation pieces, I think you're on a good track from that. Now, we spoke about the exam being 2.5 hours long. I very rarely see candidates run out of time. So there should be more than enough time for you to be able to approach your exam. Now, as a very rough indication, we're looking at 1.5 minutes for a multiple response question, 3 minutes for a short response and a select from list, and about 8 minutes for a long response. Now, bearing in mind, I'm going to go back to this amount that people write. 8 minutes seems like quite a lot of time. I would use most of that time reading the question, because for the majority of them, I probably only need about 5 correct sentences to be able to get 5 marks. So really read that question and really plan your answer and make sure it is as succinct and relevant as you can. There is also, I mentioned about the highlight feature, there's also a flag feature. And this is actually a tip that I was given years ago, and it genuinely works. If you're working through your exam and you're feeling pretty good, you've started, you're getting in the flow, and then you come across a question that you're not sure about, rather than just sitting staring at it, trying to remember your notes, trying to remember your training, just flag it, move on to the next. The more that people will sit reading a question that they don't maybe quite understand, or they can't remember what the correct response is, your confidence starts to deplete, and then that will impact how you approach the next question. Just flag it, move on. The only thing to note about that is before you go for your break, so if you are taking your 30-minute break, you've got to handle any of those flagged ones because you can't get back to them after the break. But yeah, the flag feature is a great option just to allow you to knock out any of those questions that you actually feel really comfortable with. And then you've got more than enough time to go back to that. And your brain's probably refreshed itself by that point.
Absolutely.
And this is one, Ruth, that I hear from the training provider community a lot, is that those that complete the pre-work are a lot more likely to pass first time. So much so that I've had trainers come to me and say that with pretty high accuracy, they can predict which candidate is going to pass on the first day of the course, because those ones that are coming prepared and have done that work, are more likely to go on and be successful. And I think that really plays into the study time of this qualification. It is a rigorous qualification. And even though it's just a 2.5-hour assessment, we're not looking for dissertation level work, it is still really quite all encompassing in terms of content. So if you can put that time in before you even show up for the course, you're most likely going to get the most out of your trainer during those sessions.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's some really, really strong tips in there. Certainly the candidate guidance aspect as well. I think first of all, it helps if you test things out, if you read through that thoroughly. There's so many ways of looking at that information. There's videos that you've got on the APM website there. You've got a candidate handbook, there's PDFs of the system requirements and things like that. So there's so much information there that you can just make sure that you've got everything set up, because you don't want to have that panic 10 minutes before you're about to sit this exam. And as Emily said, I think it's about 8 days before the exam, you'll get information from APM to go through that system check that everything's working. You can always raise any problems then. You've got plenty of time. You can raise them with your training provider, with APM themselves, and get it all sorted so you can kind of glide into the start of your exam. So I think that's really important. And yeah, the preparation side of this, I will echo that as well. The people that I can see that have done preparation, that are doing those additional self-guided hours of work on, above and beyond the training, they are setting themselves up for success and are most likely to pass. Absolutely. So what happens then after the exam? This is this is the area that I don't see very much about. I sort of see my candidates come out and saying, oh, we had a question on this, oh, we had this, oh, this was awful, oh, this was brilliant. What happens after people have sat the exam?
So this is funny enough what changed. Probably the biggest thing that changed in the qualification when we did the redesign. So obviously there are some questions. So the select from list and the multiple response questions, they're all auto marked. So they go through the system straight away. And then we do what's called item level marking. So your actual exam paper can be marked by up to 15 different markers. So they will mark by item, not by paper. The evidence suggests that this makes it a more unbiased approach to marking, a more standardized approach to marking. And all our markers are practicing project professionals who are very specific in that recruitment piece. But we also, because they're practicing project professionals and not markers, we put them through training with Cambridge Assessment. So they have been trained to the highest standard in terms of ensuring that they are standardized and following the marking schemes in an appropriate way. Now, crucially for this qualification, and this goes back to what I was saying about make sure you answer the question posed, because each item that you see, sorry, I call them items, each question that you see has a mark scheme behind it. And the markers can only award credit based on that mark scheme. So if I'm asking, this isn't a question, but if I was asking for 5 different leadership styles, those leadership styles will all be listed on the mark scheme, and the marker will go through each and every one and tick it off. So it's point-based marking. It reduces subjectivity, but it also means that if you're to use, for example, anecdotal evidence to support your answer, that's unlikely going to get any credit, because that's not what the question's asking. The questions are very direct. So the markers will go through their marking scheme and they will award marks. And then if they're not sure, because the reason we have practicing project professionals is that a mark scheme could list, 100 different things, but actually there's 101. So we have practicing project professionals that can say, actually, that's not on the mark scheme, but it should be credit worthy. And they can escalate that. And they can also have secondary opinions if they need it as well. So we've got quite a strong feedback loop in that respect to ensure the markers aren't working in a solitary environment, but equally are able to work with efficiency and efficacy. And then because we really, really do want people to succeed, any borderlines are then sent for a secondary panel review for final judgment. And that's a very strict process in the fact that secondary panel is specifically looking at, is there any other way that we can give another mark for any of these items? So it's not looking at whether someone has been overscored or anything like that. It is very much looking to move someone from that cusp up to a pass. So there's a huge amount that goes into the system afterwards, and it goes on a very kind of a cycle basis. We do standardization with the assessors on a very regular basis. We send them things like seed script, where we test that they're marking to the marking scheme, and we bring them in for meetings and things like that. So it is a whole system that sits behind it. And then hopefully, if you're successful, you are presented with a lovely PMQ certificate and digital badge.
Fantastic. That's great. And that's answered so many questions that we quite often get on courses as well. People saying, is there actually a human that's marking my exam, or I've been unsuccessful by 1 point. Will somebody remark it? There must be and it's really nice to know that how that process works, and that that's already been done when the results are published in there. So that's great to know. So I thought as well, it would be quite nice for me to share some of the feedback that myself and my colleagues have got for this, and also some from our candidates as well. So I just sort of did a little bit of a trawl of some of our feedback areas. And so the first two here came from our candidates. So one of them commented that they found that certainly the exam as well was much more accessible, which absolutely is what you were trying to achieve with that. So that's good to know. And then sort of backing that up, it's not a 3-hour typing test anymore, which again, I think, as you said, for accessibility, for testing purposes, it's all really, really positive. The next 3 comments then came from my colleagues, other trainers. I think we've found that the refreshed PMQ is so much nicer to deliver as a course, because we've got that opportunity to really get under the skin of project management, focus on the application, have that time to discuss with people, how they might apply this, how it might apply to their project. And certainly, this person said, they feel that they're able to focus on the application of the theory, not just training people how to pass the exam, which is what we should be doing with the project management qualification. Lots of us finding much more discussion time for projects. We use project case study, and we very much then ask for discussion points throughout the course after each of the topics about how people do certain things and how that works in their organization, how they might develop things, how something might be important, or what happens if it's not done, all of those kind of things. And then just to echo what we were talking about when we reviewed the updated syllabus, the new topics are really adding a lot of value to the course as well. I think particularly around sustainability, about diversity and inclusion as well. I think that they're topics that people want to have incorporated into their project management training as well. So that's all been really good. I then have got some tips as well. Oops, I think I've missed a word on the top one. Maybe proofreading your exams is key as well. So preparation is key. Absolutely. Maybe that was a select from list question, Emily, but we didn't have the drop down there. As Emily said, I find that the candidates that have done the preparation, that are have got a revision plan, are doing little and often revision as we go through the course, then have really got themselves in a good position when it comes to sitting the exam. I think there is a little bit of a tendency to focus on the long response questions, because it's 50 out of the 90 marks. These are the ones where you've kind of got to generate most of that information yourself. But I think it's really important to practice all different question types. I'm forever getting caught up on the ones that say which of these is not, and I think that your advice to read the question carefully and to kind of train yourself to do that is really important. So make sure you do practice all of the different question types. A lot of the questions are scenario based. They have a short project scenario. You're the project manager of a data upgrade project. You're the project manager of a multinational, process re-engineering project, whatever it may be. And so I think it's really important when you go through the training, not just to kind of think about just the theory, just, learning what are the risk responses, what are the life cycle types, but think about how that would actually work in practice, so that when you're then presented with a question about the theory in a scenario context, you've made those connections before. Mm. Give yourself time to revise. There's 24 syllabus topics. It's rigorous, it's broad, and it's deep as well. But use the syllabus to help you focus your revision. It will, very specifically say that you've got to know and understand certain things. So, pick up those things and make sure that if the steps in the process are named, that you know those steps and you understand what happens in each one of those as well. And then I think when it comes to the exam, it's so easy to sit here, isn't it, and say, address it calmly, pace yourself. Of course, it's an exam. We want to pass. We put ourselves under a bit of pressure. But again, Emily, I've had that feedback as well, that very few people run out of time on this exam. I'm not saying that you've got enough time to kind of, sit and work out what it is that you're going to do at the weekend and all the rest of it. But if you just pace yourself and keep moving through the questions, I think your advice about flagging things and moving on is really wise as well. If you do that and pace yourself through the paper, you should have ample time to be able to do all of that. I think as well, there will be some questions on there that you'll think to yourself, oh right, oh gosh, right, I'm not sure about that. Maybe have some kind of thinking structure that you use as well, that when something a little bit unexpected or more difficult comes, that you've got something that you can say, oh, okay, how might this be related to stakeholders or benefits, or whatever it may be, to kind of help draw some of that thinking out as well. Because Emily, as you said, the last thing you want is for one question and your response to that one question then to kind of affect how you answer the next questions as well. And I think that advice of kind of, okay, I don't immediately know what I'm going to do with that, flag it, let's move on, and let's address the other questions calmly. but then also when you come back to that flagged question, to have some kind of little checklist or something you might go through yourself to say, oh, is there anything about this that I could think about? Is there anything about that to think about? Because I think that often it's that feeling of stress that can then mean that we don't do as well as we might want to on some of those questions. Okay, so let's have a look ahead now then. So where it's been 1 year since the PMQ has been refreshed, I guess the first thing to say is, well, what next? So we talked about the previous incarnation of the PMQ as being sort of the Box 7 PMQ. We've just recently had BOC 8 launched. So what's the impact of BOC 8 going to be on the PMQ?
So yeah, like as the slide suggests, very little impact. The body of knowledge is this fantastic piece of resource for the whole project community, not just for PMQ candidates. So it includes so much information about such a wide range of topics, but it is designed for the project profession. And that's why we chose to align PMQ to the competence framework, because that way we could level the syllabus at the appropriate knowledge and understanding point that we needed for the qualification. So absolutely, in our learner study pack, we referenced the body of knowledge 8th edition. Now we have to go through and update all our references, but we use their diagrams and all of that kind of thing. But I think it's important to note that the content is still broadly the same. There is some additions in there, but we haven't changed the syllabus for PMQ. What we would be doing is looking ahead at the syllabus is, for example, when we do a competence framework refresh, we'll go back out to the profession. Is there any other competencies that you feel should be included in the PMQ? But we would always take some out because we're not going to grow. You've spoken a couple of times, Ruth, about how many competencies are already covered. So it's certainly not something we want to grow. But we do want to make sure it remains current and aligned to what project professionals need to be competent in their jobs. So yeah, whilst I'm a huge advocate of the body of knowledge in terms of the work that goes into it and the thinking behind it and how it is presented, luckily when the body of knowledge 8th edition came out, it didn't mean I had to go in and rewrite all the PMQ stuff, which would have been a nightmare. So yeah, fantastic. And I think that's that's really helpful to maintain that sort of consistency, but also then that currency as well. That it's not as if we're going to have to be changing things a lot, but there is that opportunity then that if there are new topics, I'll say the AI aspect of that might be something that is looked at later as more and more people use AI as part and parcel of their project management tool set, and that might be something that we think about in future maybe. Absolutely.
Okay, so then the next thing is changes to APM qualifications. So some of you might have heard that the project professional qualification, which is often seen as the next step after the PMQ, is going to be decommissioned, and there's going to be a teach out time over the coming months that we'll hear more about. How does that affect the PMQ and its status and standing in the suite of qualifications and the route to chartered, Emily?
Yeah, I mean, we were always aware when we started the thinking around putting the PMQ onto the pathway for chartered that it might impact PPQ, and it has done exactly that. It has reduced the numbers that are coming through. PPQ is a very substantial qualification in terms of it's very resource intensive. It's a case study. There's interviews and things like that with assessors, and then a written component as well. And I don't think it has really, I guess, stood the test of time in terms of the assessment methodologies that are pinned behind it, which has made it not hugely attractive to the community. People, I think, tend to do PMQ and get that knowledge and understanding, and then they're looking at chartered straight away. And I think our new pathway reflects that kind of journey. So what we decided to do was to remove PPQ from our suite of qualifications, and really focus in on what PMQ is and selling that more to the market. I think in terms of that knowledge and understanding, the PMQ syllabus is now so interlinked with the Chartered standard. So Chartered is obviously aligned to the competence framework as well. So you can absolutely see as you're going through the PMQ course material how you would be able to demonstrate your technical knowledge at a chartered interview. And so I think because of that synergy, it did unfortunately mean that for PPQ, it felt less relevant to the project profession from that perspective. It's a bit of a shame, because I really personally quite like PPQ. From that format perspective, I do appreciate it needs some work to bring it to a more current situation. But yeah, I do completely acknowledge that PMQ, with the rigor and robustness that's behind that, is definitely the best stepping stone for that technical knowledge component of Chartered.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic, thank you. And I think that, you know, we're all in the business of projects. We're all in the business of change and beneficial change. And so, you know, we need to have a look at how things can develop and move on over time as well. So I'm sure there will be more developments to come. Okay, so we're coming to the end of the session today. So just in summary, I hope that this has given you a nice sort of journey through, you know, why the PMQ was refreshed in the first place, kind of what had changed, a bit of a review of that first year, and you know, some information that perhaps you probably aren't aware of in terms of some of the data and what happens after the exam, etc. For me, I think the PMQ is a really valuable recognised qualification for project managers. I think that because we're looking at these two areas, it's not just the theory, it's the application of that theory, and that you will be tested on a broad range of project management topics, and it's part of that career pathway as well. So I think for all of those reasons, you know, it's quite rightly really respected and sought after both by employers and candidates. If you want to learn more, I've popped up there 2 QR codes that you can look at and click on to both the page on the Parallel website that is for the PMQ, and also on the APM website as well. There are loads of resources on there, and if you do want to find any further information, there's contact details on all of the websites, but particularly if you do want to get in touch with Parallel, then you can see down the bottom of the screen some of our contact details. So just want to finish off really with maybe a couple of questions that we've got. So if you've got any questions that you haven't asked yet, do please pop them into the comments. I've got a couple to ask you, maybe, or I'll also chip in as well. So I've got one question, Emily, that says that I manage projects as part of my work, but I'm not actually a full-time project manager. Is this qualification still suitable for me? So what would you say about that?
I think if you're actively managing projects as part of your work, I think absolutely this qualification is suitable. I think I almost have our internal project manager yelling at me saying, if you're managing projects, you absolutely need to do PMQ, whether it's part of your role or not. What I really like about this qualification is it is genuinely setting those projects up for success. So even if it's not a formal project, taking some of the learning from different elements like governance, like change control, can really give you real life benefit very quickly in the work environment. So much so that I use some elements from the syllabus in terms of just general day-to-day work. I am by no means a PMQ candidate, but they do help structure different ways of working to get the best return on investment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I literally this week started a course with one of our clients, and we had a couple of people, when they introduced themselves, said, I feel as if I'm a little bit of an imposter here because I haven't got the job title of associate project management, project manager, senior project manager, etc. But actually, when we talked about their experience, my goodness, they had been involved in and managed some quite significant projects, but because they were balancing that with another business as usual role, which is probably quite a challenge in itself, you know, they felt that they weren't a proper project manager. So I'd certainly reassure people on that front. And then just before we finish, one last one, somebody said, can I go straight from PMQ to CHPP? So what are your thoughts on that one?
It depends. It absolutely depends. So because we have no set criteria for PMQ, there will be some people that can absolutely do PMQ and go straight to chartership. Chartership is dependent on the complexity of the projects that you have managed and your ability to demonstrate your competence against all the different competencies that are in the standard. So my recommendation is, if you feel like you might be ready for chartership, is download the standard, go through those competencies and self-assess. See whether you can actually demonstrate those competencies. Can you evidence that you have done what they are saying and that you understand them, and you've done it to a suitable level of complexity? So yeah, we absolutely do have people going straight from PMQ to chartered, but that's because of their background and their work experience, as opposed to necessarily the traditional path.
Yeah, fantastic. And I've just got in time maximum. I'm going to actually put that on the screen because it's a little bit longer here. So glad you find the webinar helpful. Past your APM PMQ in September, what sort of experience level do I need to start, and what would you recommend? So I think, Emily, you mentioned that we're probably looking for people with about 2 to 3 years. However, you've probably done quite a bit of project management as part of your construction management degree. So you might be in a position, actually, having done the PFQ, reasonably soon, to be able to move on to do the PMQ. What would you suggest for Maxim, Emily?
I absolutely agree with the graduate project manager title there. I would say best thing, it kind of goes back to what you were saying, Ruth. If you look on the handbook, the PMQ handbook, the syllabus is all there. Have a read through it. See what you think about the kind of the course content and the leveling that's set at, and then perhaps reach out to yourselves, Ruth, for a chat about whether it would be suitable. But I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be with your construction management degree, and probably in quite good stead.
Absolutely, and I think that certainly, as you said there, you've been in the in the role for over a year. You're working client side in construction. I think you'll probably have lots of war stories and sort of application experience. That then the PMQ could add some of that really nice theoretical knowledge, and it's also probably something that you might think about talking to your line manager about in relation to the competencies that you want to develop. But I'd certainly encourage you to have a look at it, and if you feel ready, to go for it, because it's a great course. Okay, I think those are all of the questions that we've got. So thank you very much. First of all, Emily, thank you so much for participating in this. It's super to hear your review of the year as well. That's been really interesting information that you've provided us with. Thanks for everybody that's joined us on LinkedIn and YouTube. And if you'd like any further information, as I said, have a look at the APM website, have a look at Parallel's website, and do get in touch with us. But that's everything from me. Thank you very much, Emily, as well.
No, thank you for having me.
Fantastic. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.